Hey, everyone. Glad to be here, and thank you for that introduction. As mentioned, my name is Erik. I'm an engineering manager at BigCommerce, and relevant for this conference, one of the teams that I manage is the headless team. So at BigCommerce, we consider headless to be a first-class citizen. So to some extent, all of our domain teams at BigCommerce do focus on headless as it relates to their domains. But the headless team in particular is really focused on making sure we have good documentation, good sample code, tools, and ways of integrating into the BigCommerce control panel for headless storefronts. So I'm excited to walk you through how to pretty quick and easily get a Vue-powered storefront up and running, connected to BigCommerce's commerce engine. So I'm mostly going to be walking through the Notion doc you have here. I have gone ahead and I've already cloned the Git repo in question. That's this BC Nuxt Vue starter repo. I've run npm install just because that can take a while. And I've gone ahead and copied the .env example to .env, which we will see here. So what we're going to need to do first is fill in all these little asterisks here in our .env. To do that, we're first going to use the starter itself comes with some command line tools that will allow us to easily create BigCommerce channels, sites, and storefront tokens. We'll get more into what those actually are as we build them. But the first step, in order to allow the tool to do that, we need to give it an API token. And we do that by going into our BigCommerce control panel. In the control panel, appropriately titled the Vue Storefront store, we'll go into settings and scroll all the way down to API accounts. And we're going to click create API account. Now on this page, you don't need to touch token type. V2, V3 API token is correct. You're going to give it any sort of name you want. So call it something like Vue Storefront. And as for the scopes here, the permissions that the API token has to access BigCommerce data, I would suggest going ahead and just giving it maximally permissive tokens, or permissions rather. That's not strictly necessary. You could use a much smaller set of permissions for what we're going to do here today. But since it's a hackathon, you might want to play around with the BigCommerce APIs later. So I just recommend giving it maximum permissions so you can do whatever you want with it. You would then click save, and that'll pop up a modal that has the API token, client, and secret. I'm going to actually cancel out because I've already created this API account. I just want to keep the token away from prying eyes. It's actually already in my .env kind of down below, away from prying eyes. But you would then take those tokens, go into the .env, and you'll see, I believe it'll be below your store hash, you'll see API token, client, and secret. And you would want to copy paste those values into there. That having been done, the next thing we need to allow the tool to access the backend APIs is this value up here. This you'll see the URL. It may be a little hard to see on my screen, but the URL is store-9j9 blah 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 .mybigcommerce.com. That blah 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 there is what we call the store hash. Every BigCommerce store, hang on a second. Every BigCommerce store has a unique identifier of a store hash. It's used by a lot of our APIs to identify which store you want to operate on. So the .env file is going to need that in here. So I'll paste that in. You'll also see this JWT secret. This can be basically any string you want it to be. This is used by the Vue front end to communicate with the Nuxt backend. So I'm just going to type in some random, clearly very cryptographically secure string there. It can just be whatever value you want it to be. Cool. So with this being done, we should be ready to have our command line tool set up a BigCommerce channel. Now, what is a channel? So on BigCommerce, a channel represents any sort of sales platform that can transact. So a headless storefront certainly falls into that category. So I am going to go ahead and run npm run create storefront channel, and I'm going to call it, you give a name here, I'm going to call it Vue School. Wait. Any minute now. It's really taking its time. Come on. Okay, oh, interesting. I may have pasted in the URL wrong. Just a second. That looks correct. Storage. Oh, I think I know what's wrong. I did not save. Okay, so we've successfully created our channel. We've got this positive JSON response. What we're going to need here is the ID here for the channel ID. This is going to be useful in our next couple steps. So I'm going to copy that ID. First thing I'm going to do is go to the .env file and find the channel ID here. Fill in these asterisks with the correct value. And then our next step is going to be to create a site. Now, what is the difference between a channel and a site? So as I mentioned before, a channel represents any sort of sales platform that can transact BigCommerce products. One of those is a headless storefront, but they may also include things like the Facebook Marketplace or point of sale systems. So they're not necessarily actual like websites that you are hosting. If they are, though, as is certainly the case with the headless storefront, you will need a site associated with the channel. A channel can have at most one site, so either 0 or 1 sites associated with it. So to do that, I'm going to run a command. I'm just going to paste this in here. This is going to be npm run create storefront site. And I'm going to need to put in my channel ID that I just created here. So I'll copy and paste that. And you notice this site URL is just example.com. Obviously, that's not a real URL. If you do know where you want to end up hosting this thing, I recommend putting in the correct URL. It won't break anything critical for it to be an invalid URL or an incorrect URL, rather. I'll show you what it sort of breaks later. But for now, example.com will be fine for our purposes. So I'll create that. Great. I got a response, JSON payload. We don't actually need anything from this payload. We just need to know that it succeeded. And it did. So now we have our site. So let's take a quick look at what we've done so far in our BigCommerce control panel. So if I go to the channel manager here, and under storefronts, you'll see a few storefronts here. So the first one is the Stencil storefront. Now, Stencil is our native theme engine. Every BigCommerce store comes out of the box with a Stencil storefront that's ready to go. In our case, though, we want to make a headless storefront. So I have created the Vue School channel. This is what we just created with those command line commands. And you'll see this example.com URL. So this link will obviously be broken because that's not a real URL. That's why I would recommend if you do know where you actually want to host this, feel free to put in the real URL. You may also notice this Vue backup here. Full disclosure, I have created a fully working backup in case something was to go wrong. In particular, there is one thing that may often go wrong for some of you temporarily, which I'll get to later. But we should be ready to go now. We've got a channel and a site. So the last thing we need is some way for the Vue storefront to authenticate and communicate with what we call our GraphQL storefront APIs. The storefront APIs are what BigCommerce provides in order to power a storefront with all sorts of BigCommerce catalog data, customer data, et cetera. Everything you need to render data, your store data onto a storefront. So to do that, we need to create a storefront token. And we have a command line utility that will do just that. So I'm going to run npm run create storefront token. Again, I'm just pasting this in here. So you're going to run create storefront token, channel ID with the correct channel ID. Again, that's the one up here. And then host URL of localhost 3000 because we're going to be running this on a development environment initially. So I will create that. And that will give you this big long token. And you're going to want to copy that without the quotes. Go back into your .env. And here we go, storefront API token. Paste that in there and save. All right, with that being done, we have provided everything we need for the Vue storefront to communicate with the BigCommerce backend and pull in product and category data. So we should be able to run npm run dev. It's take a little bit to build, but not too long. In the meantime, I'll copy the URL it's going to be hosted at, localhost 3000. Give it a minute. Okay, the build is done. I'm going to go back to my browser to localhost 3000. Okay, looks like this succeeded. So when you run this, I mentioned earlier that there sometimes can be a delay in this working. If you see some red pop-ups here that say things like cannot fetch widgets, cannot fetch categories, and if you see that, go back to your command line. If you see errors of the form add or not found, the most likely cause is actually just that new URL we created with that create site command hasn't propagated yet. So you'll just have to wait. Usually it's very quick, as we see here. I have seen it take up to an hour in some cases. So hopefully you won't get unlucky. But if you do see that, most likely the answer is just to wait. Anyway, let's take a quick tour around this new site. So of note, this front page, it was very pretty. It does not actually include any BigCommerce data, however. So you'll see these products. These are actually not BigCommerce products. These are just placeholders. Although I will say a fine hackathon project would be to update the homepage to actually pull in BigCommerce data. However, if we go up to the top and we go to products, you will see this is pulling in BigCommerce catalog data. So these are our sample products that new stores come configured with. And on the left here, you'll see the categories that the store initially has. So I can click on, say, bath to filter for our one bath product, garden to filter for garden products, and shop all to see all products. And if we want to drill into a particular product, let's look at this fine parfait jar we see here. I can click on that, and that pops open a product page with the price information, description, and product options all pulled from the BigCommerce backend. So I'm going to pick maybe a large black parfait jar. That sounds like just the thing. I can add that to my cart. And then you'll see successfully added down here. If I go up to here to cart, you will see my parfait jar is in my cart. And I can review my order, see the total price, and finally go to checkout. Now this will pop up open. You'll see the URL has now been redirected to the test stores URL. This is the actual stores URL. This is using what's called redirected checkout. There are other options for checkout. There's embedded checkout and custom checkouts that you can explore if you're so inclined. But this checkout will work, and I could go through and actually pay for this product. I don't want it that bad though, so I'm going to back out and go back to our product page. Cool. So let's take a quick look at our BigCommerce control panel and see how we can adjust the products that we see here and see that reflected immediately on the front end. So I'm going to go into products, and here's our list of products. And let's find that parfait jar that we were working with here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make a few edits here just so we can see it reflected on our storefront. Let's go ahead and take the sample name off of the product name because we're really confident in this parfait jar. We want to sell it. I'm also feeling generous, so I'm going to give it a bit of a price reduction to $14.95. And finally, let's go click on variations here and play with those product options we saw earlier. So if we go to configure options, these are the colors we were seeing earlier that we have to choose from. Let's go ahead and add another color. I'll call it red and use our swatch here to pick the color red, obviously. I'm going to click Save Variants and Save Out. Excellent. And then if I go to my BigCommerce storefront again, or sorry, my Vue storefront again, rather, and refresh, I should see, yes, sometimes there can be a little bit of a delay, but in this case, it happened pretty immediately. So we see the parfait jar now has the sample removed from its name. The price has been adjusted to $14.95. And if I click into it, I can see, hey, we've got our new red option that we just configured. Cool. One more thing, I mentioned this category tree on the left here. That's also something we can edit in BigCommerce. So there's a couple, you'll notice there's a couple laundry items here. There's some detergent and a laundry cart. So let's create a new laundry category. I'll go into my control panel, click on product categories and create a category. Let's call it laundry. I'm going to not fill out the description now. We don't actually need to fill out any of the stuff. The defaults should be good. So I'll save and exit. This list here is actually in sort order. So, and the Vue storefront does respect that sort order. So I'm going to pull this into the correct alphabetical order because that's just how I am. Yep, verifying that's correct. And then go back to populate that new category, go back into products, select the laundry cart. And down here is a list of categories that this cart belongs to. I'm going to add laundry and then save. And then do the same thing for the detergent. Add laundry, save, and we're done. Okay, and then let's go back to our storefront, take a look. Cool, so you'll notice we have our new laundry category here. I can click on it, see my two laundry products, and we're good to go. So that's a little bit of how you pretty quickly and easily can get your storefront powered by BigCommerce products. Obviously, if you have real products you want to sell, you want to create those, create the appropriate categories. But you've got a fully up and running store here that can use BigCommerce's checkout and actually make transactions. The final thing I wanted to show you is how to actually get this off of localhost and deploy this to the web. In this case, I'm going to use Vercel. We also support Netlify and basically anything you want to use. But Vercel is pretty quick and easy. The only thing you need to do is you'll see this vercel.json here. If you click on this, you notice this has an environment variable section. You're going to need to fill these in with the same values that we put in the .env. I've gone ahead and already done this, connected to that Vue backup storefront you saw earlier, just in the interest of time. Once you fill this out, go back to your command line. I'm going to Control-C out of that. And then I do npm run deploy. Now I happen to already be connected to my Vercel account. If not, you'll see some prompts here prompting you to do that. This is going to take a little while to build. So I've gone ahead and already gotten this deployed, but we'll check back on that build later to make sure it succeeds. So if we hop into my my Vercel account, oops, yeah, here's my Vercel account. The latest deployment here, there'll be a new one popping up shortly, but let's go ahead and view this one, visit it. And we should see, once again, our starter now running on the web, deployed by Vercel. If we go to products, we're going to see the same updates we just made to our products. So you'll see the reduced price parfait jar, the new laundry category, and we're good to go. So I hope that little overview helps show how easy it is to get things up and running on a Vue storefront connected to BigCommerce. Appreciate your time here and happy to handle any Q&A anyone has.
Awesome. Thank you, Erik. We definitely have a couple of questions. So let's have a look at those. First question I want to have a look at is what are some of the advantages of using BigCommerce over Stripe?
Yeah, I mean, so I think both are viable options. I think, so I mentioned earlier, BigCommerce is an open SaaS platform. So we pride ourselves on being functional out of the box, in the sense that you can create a BigCommerce store, set up your products, set up your payment methods, and launch it, and it's ready to transact right away. But also, you can use as much or as little of BigCommerce as you want. So I guess the composability of BigCommerce is a pretty big advantage. It's a bundle of tools that all works immediately out of the box, but can also be decomposed how you want to use whatever parts you need. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Awesome. All right. I love this one because I want to talk about the starter kit a little bit also. I love that you showed us the starter kit, and I think someone of the team backstage is going to share a link in the chat as well. So definitely have a look at that and give it a star to support because I think it's a really cool project. Thanks for showing. The question is, are there any plans to upgrade the starter kit to Nuxt 3?
Yes, this is something. Actually, we have an open issue in that GitHub repo.
So someone should actually pick it up.
Yeah, that would be much appreciated. But yes, we do plan to heavily maintain this, not just this starter, but all the starters that we support.
Awesome, that sounds great. Very cool. Let's take the one last question. I see that BigCommerce Nuxt.js, yeah, exactly, uses Storefront UI. What exactly is Storefront UI?
Yeah, so it does, and that is if you want to share my screen again, brother, yeah.
Absolutely.
So that is linked to the bottom here. You'll see the Storefront UI. This is built by Devante. It is a bundle of storefront components that allows you to build a storefront pretty quickly and easily with sort of the building blocks that you'll require to run a storefront. So things like a product listing, a PDP, product display page, category listing, etc. Just basically a bundle of components that will be generally used in most storefronts. So you have something quickly out of the box to use. It's a really great library. I recommend looking into it.
Awesome. So people have a couple of GitHub repositories to check out
yeah,
and play around with. All right. I think that is the end of the questions that we have. Thank you so much for joining us and showing us all of this.
Yeah, of course. I really appreciate your time. Hope you have fun with the hackathon.